Hello, this is Mrs. Hodgkin. I teach kindergarten at Concord Elementary. I'll be reading chapters 24 and 25. Chapter 24. The dogs still didn't seem to have the energy to do anything, but Flora scrambled up with the rising sun and an empty stomach. If yesterday's 3 bites of fish were any indication they were very low on food, they would have to get it from somewhere else, and they would need sled pullers for the job. She wanted to be one of those pullers, but as she peered out from the doorway of the shelter, she realized she had not seen any sleds. They must not have made it off the ship. It made Flora sad to imagine the sturdy gliding machines on the floor of the sea, and it made her panic a little to think that even if there was a place to find food, there was no way to get there or bring anything back. And when would another ship be heading this way? Well, Flora wasn't going to let herself sink into gloom. She decided to get used to the cold. She wanted to be ready for work, just in case. And what good was a puller with cold feet? But the moment she stepped outside, the cold became painful. It was the wind that cut the hardest. She nosed into it and felt her nostrils become crusty with frost. Her eyeballs stung. Her breath caught in her lungs, and she couldn't release it without effort. She wondered if her extra hair was doing anything to protect her. Flora turned back to the wind. "Don't be a baby," she told herself. She trotted out and began to make a wide circle in front of the 2 shelters. Her knees hurt. "Romp," she told herself. "Leap about and frisk." She tried to take a little leap and found that there was no lift in her legs. In fact, she couldn't feel them any longer. Behind her, she heard a shout and turned. It was Alaric. He looked twice as big as his coat, which seemed to have 1 or 2 coats underneath, and he was waving something high in the air. Flora stumbled toward him as best she could, and he knelt down beside her. Pulling his gloves off, he buttoned her into a dark red coat. He rolled up the sleeves so her front hooves showed. But when she tried to walk, the bottom of the coat dragged on the ground. She couldn't avoid stepping into it. Alaric shook his head. "It's too big. Wait right here." He returned with a knife and a length of rope, then helped Flora out of the coat. After he cut a wide strip off the bottom, he buttoned her back into the coat, which clinched it around the middle with the rope. She looked back and tried to see herself. She looked funny. She took a few steps and stopped. Her coat whispered with every move, but no part dragged on the ground, and she felt so cozy. Even her eyeballs felt warmer. When Sophia woke up, she made a surprising sound and walked around Flora slowly, then woke up Oscar to look. They sat together and stared. Oscar cleared his throat. "I wonder how you were going to make it out here." "This answers one of my biggest questions." Sophia nodded. "I don't have to worry about my bed partner turning into a pig sickle any longer." Flora stepped back into the pale light. She began to run around the camp. She pushed hard until the cold air burned her throat. Then she ran even more. The lifelessness of the land still amazed her. There were no seals or polar bears or rabbits disappearing into their holes. No mice or birds, not even a single seagull. "I sure wouldn't mind if there was a little color out there," she said to one of the other dogs when she returned to the shelter. The dog's eyes twitched, as if he were surprised to be spoken to, but he didn't respond. She tried again. "Even a spot of green poking up out of the snow would do my heart good." The dog gave a big sigh and turned his nose in under his tail. Flora looked around the cave. "But one thing's for sure," she said in a louder voice. "A little run around camp loosens your lungs and makes breathing easier." It was as if she weren't there. No one even turned to look at who was talking. Even Oscar and Sophia were ignoring her, curled up together sleeping. One morning, after Flora came back inside from a romp, she heard a dog telling the others that the men were having a meeting. Flora leaned over to Oscar. "We should have a meeting too," she said. Sophia moved to her side, and Oscar came closer. "Plans are afoot," he said. Flora's heart thrilled. She was pretty sure that any plans would involve pulling something, even if there were no sleds. Huff! Oscar suddenly lifted his head, crossed his eyes in an effort to look down his nose. A hair was stuck to one of his nostrils. He huffed again, and the hair took flight, fluttering down to the blanket. "Cat hair," he muttered. "At least it doesn't smell like a dog," Sophia said. Flora coughed politely and sat down. "You said there were plans afoot. What happened to the expedition now? No dog sleds, said Oscar. No expedition. Couldn't they send a replacement ship with a new sled? No ship, said Oscar. No replacement. No expedition. There's a new project now, and it's called Staying Alive as Long as Possible. We might be lucky and get rescued, or the men might try to sail away in the lifeboats and save themselves. That's probably what they're meeting about. Sophia was quiet, but Flora knew she was listening. No matter what, it means the food has to last a long, long time. Flora nodded. The once-a-day fish feedings had gotten even smaller. Oscar went on. Actually, there is more food out in the snow. Flora stopped herself from jumping up. She remembered Oscar talking about this, but it didn't seem important before. About 4 months ago, the captain brought a different crew and 2 dog teams, including me, to the Antarctic. We landed not more than a mile from here. Each team pulled big boxes of food on sleds to 2 separate food stations out there. Oscar pointed his nose to the snowy wilderness. We did that so that those on the final expedition wouldn't have to carry so much food with them. The first food station is at least 3 days from here. But we don't have a sled to bring back the supplies, Flora finished. Sophia's tail twitched. Let's not get too worried. We should know a lot more as soon as the men finish their meeting. Yup, Oscar muttered. I'm a little tired. Better take a nap. Outside there were shouts and the sound of work being done. Flora walked to the doorway and saw men moving about with a new sense of purpose. The extra light lifeboat with canned food already loaded inside had been set down on its belly as if it were about to sail away on the snow. Ropes tied to the front, laid stretched out, ready for pullers. Wow, she had to tell Oscar about this. The dogs were sniffing and talking to one another in low voices. Alaric was in a terrible mood as he helped carry cans. I didn't sign on this crew to be a nursemaid, he complained out loud. No one was listening, but that didn't stop him. I don't know anything about taking care of a broken leg and busted ribs. Why do I have to stay in this nowhere place? Flora didn't have to go tell Oscar. He slipped by her and sidled up beside the boat, pacing and looking more excited than she had seen him in a long time. Oscar ran up to him. They're going to use the boat as a sled, aren't they? They're going to go get the food, right? Nope. Oscar didn't seem to be able to stop walking and sniffing. They decided to pull the boat to a place where they can safely put it in the water, sail off, and flag down a passing ship to come rescue the captain and a few others who have to stay in the camp. Poor bums. Flora wanted to do a crazy dance. Pulling! It was about to start. Big Amos had made a sort of table in front of the men's cabins out of wooden boxes. He was sharpening his knives. When Flora walked by, he got very excited and dropped to his knees at the doorway. Come to me, my little sausage. Flora backed away hastily, but she wasn't fast enough. His hands ran inside her coat, over her sides and legs. Oh, not so fat now. No worry. Still a nice pig. You come back, same place tomorrow. Tomorrow, she hoped. She'd be out doing her job, far away from him. One fun fact about me is I used to show horses up until the time I got into high school. I will also be reading chapter 25. That night, Flora was awakened by a small furry paw tapping her ear. Get up, whispered Sophia. Was it time to get hitched to the boat already? Flora rose immediately and silently followed Sophia out of the cave. Someone else was outside too. It was Oscar. A light snow was falling. Come on. Oscar sniffed the air. We have a lot to do tonight. Finally, a pulling adventure. Flora's heart soared as they crept through the camp. She noticed the packed-up makeshift sled. They were awake even earlier than the rescue crew. Where are we going? She asked. No one answered. She followed the 2 dark shapes in front of her. They seemed to know what they were doing. The falling snow had turned into tiny ice pellets that made a hissing sound on the ground and a patter on her coat. The cold began seeping into her body, but Flora was determined not to complain. It was strange to see Sophia outside of the cave. Her soft feet seemed to float above the surface of the snow. Where are we going? Flora asked again. Oscar stopped to listen and sniff the air. We're trying to find the right place. Sophia sat and chewed some ice from between her paws. And trust me, this isn't it. Oscar shook himself, sending out a spray of ice. Flora had to close her eyes as pellets bounced off her snout. Hey, said Sophia, thanks a lot. We have enough falling ice out of the sky without you throwing more in our faces. Sorry, Oscar mumbled and started moving. Flora trotted behind her friend and thought again about how unusual it was to see Sophia outside, away from her blanket. Did you say the right place? Asked Flora. The right place for what? For you. Oscar didn't stop this time. Oh, Flora looked around. She couldn't see how one place is in all this flat whiteness was any different from any other place, or different from camp. You're getting behind, called Sophia. Hurry up. Flora hustled. Why do I need a place? The only answer was the hiss of the sleet on snow. She tried to puzzle it out. Oscar wouldn't bring them out in the cold at night unless this was important. And Sophia wouldn't be out unless... Flora couldn't imagine what would make Sophia take a walk on a night like this. Oh, wait, of course. Oscar was sick. That was it. Oscar was too sick to pull the boat sled, and Sophia must have agreed to help prepare Flora to take his spot. Someone would have to be trained to handle the lead dog duties. They wanted to do this away from the others, where Oscar wouldn't be embarrassed. Flora felt a shimmery rising up in her and quickly pushed it down. She felt like kicking and prancing, but she kept walking. This was serious business. She couldn't let her friends know she suspected anything. They must have been working this out during her morning romps. Maybe every sled dog or sled puller had to go through special training, and lead dogs probably had the toughest preparation of all. With growing excitement, Flora imagined herself in the lead position. She hoped the other dogs wouldn't be too upset they weren't chosen. She'd have to be careful to appear humble and respectful of her less qualified brothers. Oscar looked around and gave her an encouraging nod. Flora felt dizzy. She put her head down and concentrated on walking. She was up for this. She wouldn't disappoint them.